One of the largest expenses that most people have actually sits in plain sight. And no, it is not your coffee habit every single day. Have you ever wondered what the true #1 wealth killer is? So in this video, we're going to discuss exactly what that largest expense is, as well as how you can save thousands of dollars per year by understanding the components of this cost and how you can actually make money with all of those savings that you have. But what is this hidden expense that drains so much of our wealth? First, we have to understand that most households have the same major categories of expenses, and that's going to be housing, transportation, taxes, utilities, and household costs, which I think I'm just going to lump in with housing, and then food, etc. How much can you really save by cutting costs in these key areas? So if we can save big on these categories, we're going to save a lot of money. Can you guess what the #1 wealth killer is? Hint. It's the cost that actually varies the most from person to person, and that's why it sits in plain sight. It's actually transportation. Cars are a huge wealth killer, and the reason is that a lot of our society attributes success to having a really nice car or a nice ride. Why do so many people buy cars they can't actually afford? I think a lot of people buy nicer cars than they can actually afford because of status. I was having a conversation with Nate O'Brien last week. He's also a financial YouTuber and the inspiration for this video. And one of the things that we both agreed on was that cars are taking away significantly from our financial well-being. What are the real financial impacts of owning a luxury car? People seem to give each other props whenever they get a new car. Hey, excuse me, man, your car is awesome. What do you do for a living? My wife's rich. It's always so nice to see your friends driving around in a nice ride. But are we truly aware of the financial burden these cars impose? However, we're not really too aware of the financial impacts that it actually brings about because it's sitting right under our noses, and everyone does the same thing. Why are used car prices skyrocketing again in 2023? In 2023, used car prices are up again. They're up 2.5% in January, month over month, and 15.7% of people who finance a new car in Q4 of 2022 committed to a monthly payment of more than $1,000 a month, which is the highest it's ever been. What can you do to avoid falling into this trap? Now, crazily enough, in addition to that, we're still seeing crazy dealer markups on many cars that are in demand. How do these markups affect your overall car costs? Look at this Porsche right here. It has a $250,000 markup, which is absolutely insane. The markup is basically almost the price of the car itself. What are the hidden costs of owning a high-end vehicle? Lastly, the average cost of ownership to operate and own a car, according to AAA in 2022, is $10,728 per year. Can you imagine how much money you're losing each year just by owning a car? So let that sink in a little bit. That's a lot of money. How can you break down these expenses to start saving? Let's actually outline some of these expenses of owning a car, and I'm going to tell you about how I would try to save money in every single one of these categories. What strategies can you implement to reduce your car-related expenses? All right, so I've pulled up this 2018 Honda Civic here, and as you can see, the true cost to own over 5 years is $43,993, which is just shy of $8,800 a year. Why did I choose a Honda Civic for this example? I purposely chose a Honda Civic. It's a pretty economic car, it's not crazy expensive, it's also 5 years old. How does choosing the right car model impact your savings? It's not like it's some crazy flashy BMW that every person in their 20s really covets and really wants. All right, we can see that it's still quite pricey to even own this economical car. Is owning an economical car still a financial burden for the average American? I mean, the average American salary is roughly $54,000 a year, so imagine owning a used car. And in that cost of ownership, every single year is taking up 16% of your gross salary. How does this percentage affect your ability to build wealth? It's going to be really hard to build wealth and compound our savings if we're continually living outside of our means, especially when it comes to car ownership. But is there a way to manage car expenses without sacrificing your lifestyle? Now, I'm not saying that having a Honda Civic should be considered as living outside of your means. In fact, I think a Honda Civic is a pretty reasonable car. But I do want to draw attention to the fact that it could be costing you a lot more money than you might think. How much more could you be losing than you realize? All right, so let's actually break down the costs here. What are the main components of car ownership costs? The biggest expense on this Honda Civic is depreciation. Why is depreciation such a significant cost for car owners? So, 99% of cars will depreciate or basically have a reduction in their asset value as wear and tear and time goes on. How does depreciation impact your financial health? So, car depreciation is one of the biggest reasons why I think investing your money in a car is a really bad idea. Because as soon as you invest that money into a car, the depreciating asset, the value of that car goes down. What alternatives do you have to investing in depreciating assets? So essentially, you are putting your money in something that is bound to go down. How can you save money on depreciation? If you want to save money on this category, I would suggest not buying a new car. Why should you consider buying a used car instead of a new one? So, infamously, if you've ever heard this, whenever you buy a new car and you drive it off the lot, it then becomes a used car, and immediately 10 to 15% of that car's value is taken off due to depreciation. What is the sweet spot for buying a car to minimize depreciation? If you look at car depreciation curves, I'll bring one up on the screen right now. Different cars are going to have different curves, but the sweet spot to buy a car is somewhere in the 3 to 5 year used range. Why is this range optimal for purchasing a vehicle? This is when most of the depreciation has been chipped off already, but the car is still basically new enough so that it's not going to run into a lot of problems with maintenance and repairs. How does buying within this range benefit your finances? So I think when it comes to cars, if you want to save a lot of money on depreciation, you want to buy a car that's used about 3 to 4 years old and maybe has between 30 and 40,000 miles. What mileage range should you look for when buying a used car? I'm always looking at that for a sweet spot. And basically, if you can get one of those cars, you're going to save a lot of money on depreciation. How much can you save by following this strategy? All right, real quick before we move into the next category, I wanted to tell you about my free newsletter. It's called Hump Days. Want to stay updated with more financial tips? It'll be linked down below, but it's a free publication that comes out twice a week covering business and the economy. How can subscribing to a newsletter enhance your financial knowledge? We put a lot of time and effort into it every single week, so if you enjoy our content here on video, you'll also probably enjoy that. I will link it down below. All right, the next biggest category on this Honda Civic here is taxes and fees. Can you reduce the impact of taxes and fees on your car expenses? Now, you're really not going to get around this one. Generally, every car that you get is going to have some sort of taxes and registration fees every single year. If you're a family with multiple cars, one way to reduce this cost is to just reduce the number of cars that you own. How much can you save by owning fewer cars? That's a lot easier said than done. But I know some families that have 3 or 4 cars, and there are only 2 or 3 people in that household. How does reducing the number of cars benefit your budget? That could save you a bunch of money here, because let's say you had 1 more extra car than you actually need. That's costing you fees every single year in registration, as well as in California. Where I'm from, you have to pass a smog check pretty regularly, which can also add up. Are there ways to minimize these unavoidable costs? But in general, you can't really avoid taxes and fees, so it's pretty hard to save money here. What's the next biggest expense when owning a car? The next big one here is financing. How can you manage financing to reduce your overall car costs? So when it comes to financing, these are in reference to interest payments, especially when you go and finance a car. Why are financing costs so high today? Not many people will buy a car up front with all the cash that they have. Not many people have $30,000, $40,000, or $50,000 to drop on a car. So what actually ends up happening is someone will put up $5,000 or maybe $7,000 down on a car and then finance the rest with interest. How can you minimize interest payments on car loans? As well as the loan interest fees are going to be super high these days because the interest rates keep on climbing and climbing. What should you do if you have bad credit and need to finance a car? So right now, I believe if you have good credit, the interest rate on a car is between 6 and 6.5%. Now, if you have bad credit, that interest rate is going to be even higher, and at that point, I probably would suggest you not to even try to buy or finance a new car. What are the alternatives to financing a new car? Perhaps go for something a little bit used or a little bit older. Why might a slightly older car be a better financial choice? Regardless if you finance, lease, or you own the car outright, the next biggest category here is fuel. How much does fuel really cost you each month? Now, this is something that people always don't really factor in when it comes to their monthly payment. They might say to themselves, yeah, my monthly payment is $500 or $600 a month, but they're forgetting that gas costs them $200 a month every month. Can you afford the hidden costs of fuel? So if we look at the cost of fuel, just for the Honda Civic here, it's $12,807 over 5 years. That's an extra $25.61 per year, or about $200 a month. What can you do to reduce your fuel expenses? That's assuming you drive at 15,000 miles a year, and that can really add up. I mean, there's not really that much you can do when it comes to saving money on gas. What practical steps can you take to lower your fuel costs? You could get a Costco membership and always fill up at Costco. It is a lot cheaper to fill up there, so you could save between $5 and $8 every time you fill up, and that could add up over time if every single time you fill up your car, you go to Costco. How significant are these small savings over time? You could also buy an electric car, but that's not always feasible. And honestly, electric cars are really expensive these days. Is investing in an electric car worth it for your budget? So, I mean, hopefully in 10 to 20 years, everything is going to be moving towards electric and more fuel efficiency. However, right now, I don't really see us just stepping away from fossil fuels anytime in the next 5 years. What's the future of fuel efficiency and electric cars? So, assuming you have a car right now, you are probably going to be spending money on fuel for at least the next 5 years. And honestly, I think gas prices are just going to continue to go up over time. How can you prepare for rising fuel costs? Insurance for this Honda Civic is $6,949 for 5 years, or about $115 extra per month. How can you lower your car insurance costs? A good tip I got from Nate O'Brien when we were talking about cars was that every single year, he marks down a certain date on the calendar, and right on that date, he calls his insurance company and sees if he can get a better rate on his insurance. Why should you regularly review your insurance rates? And if he can't do that, then he's going to shop around for different rates at different insurance providers. How much can you save by shopping around for insurance? The thing with car insurance is that many places will offer you similar or even equal insurance to your current provider, and every insurance company knows that if they get you as a long-term customer, you're worth a lot to them over time. What strategies can you use to negotiate better insurance rates? So what you can do once a year is, let's say you have AIA insurance. You can use that AAA insurance policy that you have, call around to different places, call State Farm, call Progressive, call Geico, see if you can get a better rate for your exact same coverage. How often should you review and compare your insurance policies? Oftentimes, these companies are going to try to undercut each other, and often you will get a better deal. saving you a lot of money in the short and the long run. What are the benefits of regularly comparing insurance rates? Now, this is personally something I even do with utility bills, like for example, my cell phone plan or an internet bill. Can similar strategies be applied to other monthly expenses? So, for example, with Comcast, I have it marked on my calendar every single year to call them and just get the introductory rate again. How can you leverage introductory offers to save money? So every single year, I've done this for 4 straight years now, but around, Christmas time, I usually call Comcast. I'm like, hey, things are getting a little bit tight on the budget, and I might consider switching to a different internet service provider. What should you do if your current provider doesn't offer a better rate? If you're not able to honor the introductory offer, you'll usually be connected to their retention department, in which case they will usually extend the offer for you for another year or 2, and I've basically done this every single year. How can you effectively negotiate with service providers to maintain low rates? So, if you are watching and you're from Comcast, I never did that. However, if you're not from Comcast, this is something you can do. What other utility services can you negotiate better rates for? You can call utility bills like that and see if they'll offer you a promotional rate moving forward. All right, so repairs and maintenance are the final 2 parts of this slice here, and these are hard costs to really reduce unless you know what you're doing around a car. How can DIY maintenance save you money? With YouTube tutorials these days, you can actually learn how to do basic maintenance on your car if you're willing to learn and put in the time and the effort. What basic car maintenance tasks can you handle yourself to save costs? For example, changing your oil is not super difficult. You could watch this 20-minute tutorial, for example, from ChrisFix, and you can learn how to change your oil. How much can you save by performing your own car maintenance? And then every subsequent time you change your oil, you're probably going to save between $100, $125, and $150 on labor. What long-term savings can you achieve by doing your own maintenance? If you think about how many times you'll have to change your oil in your lifetime, that means watching that 20-minute YouTube video on how to do it is going to save you a bunch of money in the long run. Is the time investment worth the savings? That depends on you, if you like to, work on your car or not. But that's pretty interesting. What other maintenance tasks can you learn to handle yourself? Another thing that you can do is that whenever your check engine light comes on, you can go to a place like AutoZone, and they have a free diagnostic tool. How can you diagnose car issues yourself before going to a mechanic? So you just go there, they tell you what's wrong with your car, and then you can decide what you want to do with it. What are the benefits of using a free diagnostic tool for your car? Here's a little bit of a personal story. My mom, who's in her 70s, bless her heart, she had the check engine light on her car go off, she couldn't figure out what it was, and she was afraid to drive on it. What can go wrong when you ignore warning lights on your car? She just kind of stayed at home, wasn't very mobile, and then when she got to the dealership, she just found out that the check engine light was basically signaling that the gas cap was not screwed on very properly. How can understanding simple car issues save you time and money? So, she wasted her time in going to the dealership, and, had she just known it was a gas cap, I'm sure she would have just kind of finagled it around with it until the check engine light went off. What are the common minor issues that can trigger warning lights? So sometimes the check engine light is a really benign problem, and that's something that's good to know. How can you quickly identify and fix minor car problems? All right, so my last tip here is that if you can go without a car, that actually might be the best ultimate solution that you can have. What are the financial benefits of not owning a car? So let's pretend you don't have a car, and let's say you save $10,768, the average cost per year of ownership, and instead you take that money and you go invest it in yourself or you invest it in the stock market. How can investing your car savings boost your financial growth? So, What if you took $10,000 in 2018 and you put it, let's say, in Microsoft stock? Well, Microsoft stock has done really well for the past 5 years, and it's almost tripled in that time. What returns can you expect from investing in the stock market? That means your $10,000 investment would be worth closer to $30,000, and who knows what it would be worth in another 5 or 10 years. What are the risks and rewards of investing versus saving on car expenses? Now, that's just one example, obviously. And obviously, I chose a really good example where your money triples. You could also lose your money. But the idea here is that the opportunity cost is so great because not only are you paying $10,000 for the cost of ownership of the car, that means you're not having that $10,000 work for you elsewhere. Why is opportunity cost important in financial decisions? Another thing that you can consider is just living closer to where you work. How can your living location impact your car expenses? So, a lot of people, they commute to work in their cars, and that creates a lot of wear and tear, depreciation, fuel costs, etc. What savings can you achieve by reducing your commute? Now, if you have the option to live closer to where you work, but the rent was a little bit higher, let's say it was $200 more per month, you actually have to do the work and figure out, is that worth it to you in dollars and your time? Is paying more rent to save on commuting costs a smart financial move? Definitely could be worth it. You could be paying $200 more per month for a place that's closer to your work, but now you don't have to drive as much, saving you fuel, depreciation, maintenance, wear, and tear. All that good stuff. How much can reducing your driving save you annually? It could actually amount to a lot more of savings. I mean, you probably know someone that has a crazy commute. How do long commutes drain your finances? I remember I used to work in corporate culture, and people would drive 45 minutes regularly or even an hour just to get to work. These costs add up. What are the hidden costs of a long commute? So really, consider where you live and where your workplace is. And, when you are applying for a new job, that's something you can consider as well. How can your job choice influence your transportation costs? So, with car prices still going up and trying to keep up with the Joneses these days, try not to succumb to owning a car that you can't really afford. How can you avoid the trap of affording a car you don't need? So, to recap, if you are trying to buy a car, try to buy it in the sweet spot of the depreciation curve, usually 3 to 5 years used. Shop around for insurance every single year. Try reducing your fleet if you have multiple cars for the same household. Try considering living closer to work. What other strategies can you implement to maximize your savings? All right, guys, I hope that you enjoyed this video. Want more free financial tips? Make sure to check out my free newsletter, Hump Days. That's where we have that free business newsletter twice a week that'll be linked down below. How can staying informed help you achieve financial freedom? I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you for being here. What are your thoughts on managing car expenses? Let me know what you guys think in the comments.